There is a strange law that governs human behavior. The moment you truly stop wanting something, it begins to move toward you. The relationship you stopped chasing suddenly returns. The opportunity you had already accepted was gone, appears again. Even the person who ignored you for weeks somehow reaches out the moment you stop thinking about them. It feels almost ironic, but this has nothing to do with fate, luck, or the universe rewarding positive thoughts. It is something far more brutal. People can sense desperation, and desperation is one of the weakest positions a person can occupy. When you want something badly, whether it is affection, validation, success, or recognition, you begin to behave differently. Not dramatically, not in ways that are obvious to you, but others notice. Your replies become immediate. Your patience becomes endless. Your standards begin to quietly dissolve. You tolerate behavior that once would have insulted you. You remain in situations that slowly drain your energy. Why? Because having something feels safer than having nothing. But the moment you begin operating from need instead of choice, you surrender power. Scarcity distorts judgment. Think about the last time you walked into a grocery store while starving. Suddenly, everything looks appealing. Food you would normally walk past without a second glance now feels tempting. Cheap, mediocre meals suddenly seem worth considering. Hunger lowers your standards. You are not choosing based on quality. You are choosing based on relief. But walk into that same store after you have eaten a full meal, and your behavior changes completely. Now you move slowly. You observe. You examine what is worth your attention and what is not. You become selective. Power operates in the same way. The man who is starving will accept anything. The man who is satisfied can afford to reject almost everything. And rejection is where power begins. People are naturally drawn to those who appear complete on their own, not because indifference is charming, but because independence signals strength. Someone who does not need you is someone who cannot easily be controlled. And human beings are deeply sensitive to power dynamics. They instinctively respect what cannot be pressured. They become curious about what cannot be easily obtained. This is why attention often flows toward the person who seems the least desperate for it. But many people misunderstand this principle. They attempt to imitate detachment. They delay their replies on purpose. They act distant during conversations. They pretend to be relaxed about things they secretly care deeply about. It becomes a performance, a calculated display of indifference. But performances are fragile, because the truth always leaks through. Your tone reveals it. Your body language reveals it. Your questions reveal it. People are incredibly skilled at sensing hidden motives. They know the difference between someone who acts uninterested and someone who genuinely does not depend on their approval. One feels forced, the other feels effortless, and effortlessness carries authority. I learned this lesson the difficult way. For a long time, I believed that if I simply behaved calmly enough, life would eventually reward my patience. I tried to appear casual about things I deeply wanted. I convinced myself that pretending not to care would somehow create the illusion of strength. But the illusion never held, because beneath the calm exterior was the same hunger, the same expectation, the same quiet hope that something would finally arrive and change everything. And hunger cannot command respect. The real transformation begins when you build a life that does not require rescue, When you stop looking at other people as solutions to your boredom, your loneliness, or your dissatisfaction. When you invest in your discipline, your work, your routines, your environment. When you begin constructing a life that feels solid enough to stand on its own. When your own company becomes enough. This is when your position changes. You are no longer chasing, you are choosing. And people feel that shift immediately. They notice that your attention is not easily obtained. They sense that your presence is not guaranteed. And scarcity, real scarcity, creates value. But there is a darker illusion hidden within this philosophy as well. Sometimes people stop wanting things not because they have found strength, but because they have been wounded too many times. They convince themselves they no longer want connection. They claim they are above desire. They call their withdrawal wisdom. But in truth, they are simply protecting themselves from disappointment. This is not detachment. This is exhaustion disguised as philosophy. True detachment is something very different. True detachment is calm. It means this: if the opportunity appears, you welcome it. If it disappears, your life remains intact. Nothing within you collapses. Your stability does not depend on a single outcome. You are not pretending not to care. You simply do not rely on the result. This is the difference between power and defense. Defense avoids loss. Power remains steady, regardless of outcome. And here lies the final paradox. The more complete your life becomes, the less you require from the world, the less you seek approval, the less you chase attention, the less you depend on external outcomes to validate your existence. And strangely, this is when opportunities begin to appear, because people pursue what they cannot easily possess. They respect what cannot be pressured. They become intrigued by what does not depend on them. Everything begins to move toward the person who wants nothing. Not because that person is lucky, but because they have built a life that no longer needs saving. And the individual who cannot be saved is the individual who cannot be controlled.